Hello there, wonderful people of West Africa and beyond. Welcome to Citizens Are, your democratic citizens engaging and current affairs radio program coming to you live on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on WADR.org. As you know, Citizens Are is where we bring you interactions on governance and democracy with the aim of creating and enhancing awareness of democratic principles, processes, and build a culture of democracy, peace, and citizenship in the sub-region. Let's remind you that previous episodes of this program are available online on our website wadr.org and on AudioMac, as well as on all social media platforms on Facebook and YouTube at WADR English Service and WADR News, respectively. This program is also broadcast on all of our partner radio stations across the sub-region, and it is in partnership with the National Endowment for Democracy, NED. I am Christopher Ticho, your host. As you know, every last Saturday of the month, we bring you a debate on democratic concern, which encourages civic participation to critically harness democratic gains. And today's debate is about encouraging women's leadership in a context where their voices is less heard. In many societies, women's voices are too often sidelined in leadership and decision making. Yet, across Africa and the world, trailblazers are proving that inclusion is not just a right, but a necessity for progress. Be a part of the program with your thoughts and contributions via our email wadr@wadr.org. As Professor Ali Mari Tripp observes in her book, Women and Power in Post-Conflict Africa 2015, women's political participation is not just about numbers, but about transforming the very nature of governance. She notes that when women gain leadership positions, they often introduce more inclusive, transparent, and socially responsive policies, reshaping democratic institutions from within. Available data by the World Health Organization and the World Bank indicate that women make up over 50% of Africa's population. Yet, their representation in leadership and decision-making remain disproportionately low. Why is that so? And what are the barriers hindering women's voices? We shall today on the program explore with our guests. According to the United Nations Women's 2024, women hold only 26.5% of parliamentary seats globally and less than 20% of ministerial positions in Africa. In the corporate world, less than 5% of chief executive officers in Africa are women, while cultural and structural barriers continue to silence women's voices. Yet, across politics, business, and social advocacy, determined leaders are proving that women's inclusion is not just about fairness, but a major driver of democratic growth, innovation, and sustainable development. On today's edition of Citizens Are, we bring you a power-packed debate on how to amplify women's leadership in spaces where their voices are least heard. Our guests are Honorable Shamima Muslim, Ghana's Deputy Presidential Spokesperson, and Gifty Annor-Sika Asantewah. She is the Chief Executive Officer of Women in Forex Ghana. And Olakunle Sanni, he is the National Coordinator of Child Protection Network in Nigeria. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much for having us here.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Right.
Good afternoon.
Thank you very much for your availability to discuss this very pertinent issue of inclusivity, particularly as women are at the very center of today's debate as well. But first of all, there's a school of thought that argues that there is a deliberate policy and actions by government and society to close the gender disparity gap and amplify women's voices the more through affirmative actions. And so the question is, why are there still gaps after years of advocacy? As we have two women on the program and a man, it is just fair to begin with the man. So let me begin with you, Mr. Olakunle Sanni, to answer this. Why is it that there's still a gap after years of advocacy?
Okay, thank you very much. I like the fact that you want to put the man on the spot. Yeah, why there's still a very huge gap, um, despite the huge advocacy, I want to say because of the level, because of the nature of the society, particularly the African society that we lived in, where we still believe that the women or the women folks still have that their rightful place is in the kitchen, so where we believe that we don't have to, for many societies in across Africa, there is still less investment in the education of children, and even for those girls or women who have been able to acquire a level of education, there is still this level of this mental state that is residual within these young ladies, that they are they are second they're second to the man, and so they cannot they don't actually have to, until they are given opportunities, they don't actually have to push for these opportunities. And, because it's, we experience it among young girls, and even as girls have had instances in schools where we had children, some girls, to take over leadership in some certain programs. And these girls insisted that the boys had to be the one to take the lead role in that. So, even though that girl is being given education at that time, but this mental this belief that the girl should cannot take the lead where the boys are, it's already part of these girls. And it took a lot for us to encourage these girls that we are giving you the opportunity to express yourself, and we can see the capacity in you. And so despite this advocacy, the opportunities are not there enough. One, the the mental state of the girls who also are not adequate for them to really take over the roles, as the leadership roles expected of
Right.
them, until some are pushed. So these are practical experiences that I've had over time.
Right. So, Sani, you still believe that there is a need to continue pushing and again have a mental orientation of these women to step up for these critical roles. I'll come back to you
Yes.
once again, but let me move to Ghana, where I have my two guests, and then speak to the Honorable uh, Deputy Spokesperson for the government. And I'm very, very honored to have you on the program, Honorable Shamima Muslim. First up, let me have your initial take on this. Why is there a gap till date, despite years of advocacy?
Thank you to your listeners and to you, first of all, and greetings to your listeners and your viewers, for those of us who will be watching us online. Why is there a gap? It looks like we haven't even answered that question well over the years, decades actually. Perhaps if we are able to answer the question, to even frame the question and answer it well, maybe we would make the gains that we want to be seeing. Just to say also that this is a global problem. I recall a couple of years ago, I was at the CSW 63, that was, and in that particular year, there was the global report of a general decline in women's representation in national assemblies. The statistics for that year pointed to the fact that less women were putting themselves forth for election and less women were winning elections. And fast forward to 2025, in our parliament of 275 members of parliament, women constitutes only about 40. And I mean, the ruling government, the NDC, had 20 representatives each in the last parliament. The opposition party then also had 20, but at least for the incumbent government, which is the NDC government, we managed to move the numbers from 20 to 41. That is still wholly inadequate in comparison to the minimum benchmark of 30% women in national assemblies, which is really the target that even the Interparliamentary Union has, tasked many of its member countries that within the next couple of years, I think if countries are unable to meet a minimum 30% representation of women in their national assemblies, they would risk being moved from member status to observer status. So there is a global clarion call to take a second look at why we are not making as much progress. And anytime there's a global problem, when you unpack it to make it local, you'll see that it's usually worse. Even though there are pockets of success within the African continent, Rwanda we mentioned, Uganda we mentioned, that have attained parity in terms of female representation in politics, through representative elections. There's still a long way to go. As I have said, in Ghana, there's still a long way to go. We can point out to breakthroughs that some decisions have brought to our own country, Ghana, for example. I mean, 65 years after independence, in fact, 68, 2 years' time, Ghana would be 70 years old since independence on 1957. 68 years after independence, it is only this year that Ghana can boast of ever having its first female vice president, because the president, John Dramani Mahama, against all odds, decided on 2 election cycles to go with Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman, who, after those 2 election cycles in opposition, finally won the 2024 election and is now the first female vice president. That is a breakthrough. If you look at other glass ceilings that we have, and I'm making a point to illustrate why I'm giving these examples. In political appointments that were made this year, the president was very intentional about nominating women into positions that previously didn't have women. In the security services, for example, we've never had a female fire officer in our country. We've never had a female prisons officer in our country. This year, 2 women have been appointed in those roles, and they are trailblazers. What this means is that they are opening new avenues of ambition for all the women who have worked in these services. In fact, prisons has a lot of women. If you go to the prisons, there's quite a lot of women working in our prison service, the services. Prisons also, the fire service also has a lot of women, but no woman had risen, to become the head of those institutions. So there's a certain level of intentionality that we must bring into this conversation. Unless we do that, we'll keep running around the ring and the numbers will keep declining, at best fluctuating, but never really meeting the targets. For many countries like ours, last year is when we finally passed an affirmative action bill that was to ensure there is a framework, a legal framework, to literally force the hands of not only governments or the public sector, but even the private sector, to comply with the aspirations of that particular bill. we are hoping that in the not so distant future, we should be able to attain parity. Where the initial targets is at least 30% to 35 to 40, 45, 50% parity in terms of representation of women at various leadership positions. So the gap persists because one, there is no enough organizing around the root causes of underrepresentations, which are deeply patriarchal in nature, entrenched patriarchal values and norms that continue to mitigate against women's social and political leadership. It's also around the issues of economy, because those who control wealth control decision-making processes. And when women even elect to offer themselves for elective positions or to run contests or to do anything that requires the mobilization of funds, it means putting them in a vulnerable position to go to mostly men who control wealth and capital to seek for those supports. Sexual harassment will come in. So there is that, and there's also the general political environment and what people describe as low political commitment to ensuring their values. And I'm always saying that, having transitioned as an activist into politics, that we need to even unpack what political commitment is. Because for politicians, they're looking at where the numbers, what decisions or what sets of decisions bring them the numbers or bring them value. If politicians woke up and realized that to appoint more women in positions of leadership is going to bring them more women's vote, I'm sure they would have done that by now, because in many of our electoral, books, there are more women than men on our electoral register. The register that we took into the last election in Ghana had more women. The register that we took into the local level elections a year before our national elections had more women. But I'm telling you, that even though we had more women on the electoral register, less than 5% of women were elected in our local assemblies. Local assemblies where we would think that the barriers to entry are less in terms of financial, even social and whatever. It's where we are even not seeing growth over the years. So the patriarchy still exists, the sociocultural context still exists, the financial barriers still exist, and the personal barriers still exist until women are tired of being underrepresented, until they are tired of being underrepresented, until many more women put themselves out for positions, whether they are elected positions or even appointed positions, because sometimes the appointments will come, but some women will turn it down because my husband said no, my family says no. These are the conundrum of barriers that continue to mitigate against our low representation in national life.
Right. Thank you very much, Honorable Shamima Muslim. Well, of course, the debate just got heated. The more we've actually heard from an advocate, and we've also heard from someone in governance or governance. She is the deputy spokesperson for the current government in Ghana, Shamima Muslim. Let me at this point in time move to the corporate space and then talk to Madam Sika Gifty, and she is the Chief Executive Officer of Women in Forex Ghana. And of course, as the statistics have it, it indicates that about 5% of African Chief Executive Officers are women. The rest, 95, are men. How come she's been able to break all barriers to get in there? We'll be hearing from her pretty shortly. Madam Gifty, thank you so much for your time with us on the program. Let us also hear from you. What do you also make about women's underrepresentation in leadership, particularly being chief executive officers or owning business in the corporate space? But while we wait for Madam Gifty, let me go back once again to Nigeria and then speak to Mr. Olakunle, Sanni. So, from advocacy perspective, as you still work, studies reveal that when women lead in advocacy, especially in child protection and social justice, communities experience stronger outcome. Yet traditional systems often exclude women from decision making. And from your work with Child Protection Network in Nigeria, how can civil society and grassroots movements create a platform that amplifies women's voices in social and community leadership?
Okay, thank you very much. I like to emphasize that for the sector where I work,
Mm-hmm.
I must tell you that it is a sector that is most dominated by women. It's a
Mm,
sector where most of people who advocate or speak for the right of children
mm,
or for the protection of children there are more women than men. But and I also agree because this was a concern for recently we took a look at the leadership. Uh, the network I represent, there are also about four other networks that are strong in Nigeria that also focus on children. And I mean, we looked at it and we looked at the leadership. Do you believe all of us, we are all men? All the leadership of of the five networks, we are all men, and we asked ourselves, what is actually happening? What is actually happening? Why do we have all men in this? So some of the things that but despite that, I will tell you that for for my team members, the national executives, I have out of 9 officers elected. We have about five of them. I mean, we have more women in the team than the men. I mean, we have just about 4 men and we have 5 women. But
okay.
yet, when it comes to decision making, when it comes to leadership, when it comes to, I mean, driving the process in the network, the men, despite the huge number of the women we have in this space, the men still take the lead. And
Mm,
so this bias, I mean, often coming very, very strong here. That okay, yes, the women have been able to take, I mean, have been able to come into the space in much number, but yet, in that space, the small number of men who are there still often take the leadership positions when it comes to
others would
determining.
argue Others would argue then it means that in your space, you using women as tokenism.
So, well, I will not agree to that, because when it comes to this space, but where I'm even driving at is to also talk about, to emphasize what Honorable mentioned earlier, the patriarchal society
Mm-hmm.
that we live in, that no matter the efforts the woman puts into some of these things still come to play. And not just like she said, it's not I mean, it's not an African thing alone. It's general, it's across board, because you see all around the world, you see, I mean, men taking, even though yes, the women are very active in some sectors, but yet the men are dominating this space. And some of these things also come with I mean, I think, I think some of the factors that have also contributed to this for our space is the work-life balance. The men could be able to go the extra mile I mean, you are the leader in your home. You determine what happens in your home. You are and then for the woman needs to take some permission, and
Mm,
the woman still has responsibility to take care of, I mean, perceived to be the one that will take care of the home. So there's this restriction that comes with trying to balance your home and trying to balance your work. And this also makes the woman step back when it comes to leadership position, because it means that they are going to go all out. If they are going to go all out and not be available sometimes, or not as much available as they should
mm,
I mean, for the whole. And so
right.
until we begin to, I mean, adjust and begin to understand that, because it's more than the issue of equity. it's also the issue of perception and acceptability of responsibility of the home. That the home
Right.
does not only belong to the women,
So
it
my
also
question to
belongs to the
you,
men.
right. So my question to you is that as a CSO, how is your advocacy work championing changes within the grassroots movement, where at least in the community, in rural areas where women are deeply stifled by patriarchy and other things, or all of the factors that are said to be stifling women's ability to really take up leadership roles? How is your outfit, CSOs, at least creating a change in Nigeria?
So, our efforts so far are beginning to help the society to understand that the women have critical roles to play in the society, and so and that's why many of our interventions, particularly when it comes to empowerment, for the family, we focus more on empowering the women, because when the women have more resources, when they have the financial resources to be able to take care of certain things within the home, then it gives them a level playing field where they can where they can contribute. So this has also helped in a lot of ways to ensure that the families are now allowing the women to come to the table to join in making decisions. And it is that I can say there's about 30% increase so far in but yet we're nowhere near where we want to be at this
Okay.
moment. But there's an increase so far.
Okay. Mr. Sanni, hold on. Let me go back to Ghana and then engage the Chief Executive Officer of Women in Forex GH, Madam Gifty Annor-Sika Asantewah. Welcome back to the program. I think the network was really worrying. Are we good now?
Yes, I'm good. I don't know whether you can hear me. Can you hear
Yes,
me?
I can perfectly hear you loud and clear, and I'm very grateful that you've still been able to join the link once again. So you've actually heard submissions from Nigeria and the Honorable Minister, and want to find out from you that what is the situation like in the corporate space, because statistics indicate that 5% of African chief executive officers are only women, and you are one of those, or you part of that particular 5%. How did you break through all the barriers that came your way, and what is your story that you can share to at least empower other people who want to be like you?
Thank you very much. Hello to my co-guest again, and then hello to the viewers as well. Well, when it comes to leadership in Africa, let me center it in Africa. It looks like Mr. Sanni and Honorable Minister have said everything in bits and pieces all together. So just let me say something around the lines that when we start seeing women leadership as organizational and community benefit, it will be easier, so that it doesn't look like women are trying to attack patriarchy. Please do understand me?
Mm-hmm.
So that it makes it easier for us to have some sort of alienation or alliance with the male counterpart, so they don't feel threatened, so that empowerment does not feel like some threat to patriarchy, because our socialization, especially in Africa, does not give the woman a say. Domestication is not able, they're not able to differentiate domestication and then leadership. Do you understand? In the Bible, we saw Deborah doing amazing as the judge of Israel, and she ruled just fine. So in context of intellectual prowess, patriarchy or gender does not come in. But then the society has not gotten to the part where intelligence is weighed on the same level, but then they use patriarchy and anatomy. In fact, biology and anatomy is already going against the woman. Because when a woman is done with school and she wants to probably continue her degree or master's degree, a lot of them will fall back because family will want them to start having babies and getting married. The few that will want to thrive during those positions or trying to further their education are seen as very ambitious. So the society itself frowns upon the leadership of women. In as much as, I mean, since 1995 to now, the leadership, has risen globally from 11.3% to 27%. There's still room. And then we are always talking about advocacy on the surface, but the root cause, our socialization. We are still socializing our kids like the same, like in the 90s. The girls are still doing what they are supposed to be doing, like the cooking.
Is that a situation?
I will say, as I'm saying, you see, we are talking about gaps. There has been differences, but I'm saying that we still have parents that does not actually think. I have a lady that has a first class. She came to one of my mentorship programs, and she actually had a I think she had admission. She was looking out for a scholarship. I think she got some part of a scholarship, and she was trying to learn Forex and then help herself out with the rest. The father said, "Why does she even want to go and do her masters when she will probably end up in the kitchen like Mr. Sanni did?" And this is a current, she's the first daughter. And then so the father or the mother is so old. Let's say even if the person is 50 years as a parent, we still have that mindset in the system. It has not gone away. Even as much as we say all these things online, and we have a lot of people that can't even read or write. They are very native or primitive in their thinking. So I think advocacy and implementation and recognition of women like honorable and some of these strong women, it needs to be loud and very clear so that we don't even have a lot of role models. We don't have enough role models. It's now looking nice because you have people like honorable on here. People are looking up to her. We have the vice president of Ghana. Namibia is doing amazing. They have the president, they have the vice president, and then the judge. They are all women. Okay. Some of these things are a lot of encouragement to women. Coming back to my sector, we don't even have 1% of women in that sector that are doing finances, and it's even in the greatest area because majority of women don't have financial freedom in Africa. I don't know whether it's because the socialization makes them the dependent onto the men. Okay. We don't have a lot of them. I don't know whether it's because of the socialization. I wouldn't say the opportunity is not there because we have a lot of girls in schools now. Even a lot of them start till they are done with high school, and then the fallout start happening. So I feel like we need to reorient ourselves, maybe change and tweak a little bit of our system and cultural norms, and then have some sort of aggressive roots, grassroots sort of socialization going on, because maybe the Gen Zs are going to do better with this sort of arrangement than the millennials and the other old people. In my industry, we don't even have 1% of women in there. And then even those of the people that strive to get there are either pointed as sleeping their way there or getting there by favors. So even a woman doing her best is not recognized. She is tagged, and that does not look good. Do you understand? It does not look good. People that want to go there. And then Honorable also spoke about sexual harassment. How are you going to be a CEO when you are not even getting help? Most of these people at the helms of affairs are men. And now you can how are you going to even get the help in the first place?
Right.
Resilience is not easy because it is not easy to even start anything in Africa. And as a woman, it's even in the negative for you. But
Right.
we are hoping that as we speak and talk about issues like this, it is heard, and then we balance it out. Systems,
Right.
organizations see to it, and then we see how the future will bring some sort of positivity in the area. We hope for
Right.
more advocacy in the area.
Very well. And so that's the much more reason West Africa Democracy Radio, as part of program to deepen democracy and promote citizenship, we have dedicated today's episode to at least highlighting the major reasons why women find it so difficult to lead, or why women voice is less heard in terms of leadership, and what are some of the barriers. And we've actually highlighted them. But let me still be in Ghana and then move to Shamima Muslim. So, you've highlighted some of the challenges you've heard from the advocacy point of view, as well as the corporate space. As a government, what should be some of the priorities that a government should focus on in order to achieve parity, and also create the enabling environment for women to thrive? Of course, I know the government of Ghana has actually launched the free sanitary pad to keep more women in schools. And of course, aside that, also there are other policies that the government has actually rolled out. But beyond that, what should be the other enabling environment created by the government to harness the full potentials of women in leadership?
Solutions. If you look at the global African and Ghanaian context, you would agree with me that there are a lot of existing agreements and laws. If you come to Africa, the Maputo Protocol, Agenda 2063, has its own gender aspirations where the goal is parity, not a reverse discrimination. The goal is parity, that every country would benefit if all of its members are contributing their fullest potential to the growth and sustenance of their local economy. So again, it is important to start at the legislative level. Let us have the requisite legal regime and legislation that at least puts on paper that these are the goals of our country, and we are all expected to comply with those with the provisions, the affirmative action provisions. And if you take a look at that, beyond the various constitutions that actually promote non-discrimination, you would now need specific pieces of legislation, like in the case of Ghana and other countries, a specific affirmative action legislation which must be enforced, which must be complied with, which, for many countries, including ours, the Ministry of Gender and Children and Social Protection is mandated to ensure that there's a gender equity committee. I happen to be a member of that committee, to ensure compliance by political parties, compliance by governments, compliance by corporate organizations, compliance by public sector institutions. So there is a massive continuous public education and awareness that we need to roll out so that we are all aligned with the vision and the purpose, and also to assuage the negative sentiments around conversations of women's empowerment. It is continuous awareness and knowledge sharing that would assuage those who feel that empowering women is going to turn our societies, upside down. And I say this very mindful of the fact that there are some women who are often described as gatekeepers of patriarchy. If all women were aligned with the cause or the advocacy, like I'm saying, we wouldn't have much of a problem, because if you go to elections, more than half of the time, women are more on the register. So you can say that the lowest hanging fruit is to get more women to also vote for more women, but that's
Are
not
women their own
happening.
problem in that case?
No, I wouldn't say women are their own problem. There is a problem we must all face, and women are part of the problem just as men are part. Patriarchy affects both men and women because there are women who, out of love, also believe that this is where their role should be. A woman's role should be a supportive role. And if that's the mindset as a result of the socialization of that person, you cannot say that the person hates woman or the person is an enemy of the woman. This is how the person's social outlook has been constructed for years. That's how their grandmothers did it, that's how their mothers did it, and that's how they also feel we should do it. So it is the instrument of education, is the instrument of example, because as we now see many women break out of these traditional molds and begin to do great things and still are able to be married and still are able to have children, and even if they choose not to be married or to have children or not to have children, as was the case of some reality for women in the past, there's not all of our grandmothers or our grandmothers that had children or that were married, but they contributed value to their society. So it's about making those connections, that your value is not only found if you are married or you have children, but you can be unmarried, you cannot have you can be a woman without children, but your contribution to your society would outweigh those that also decide to do that. So it's not an either or situation. It's not women are their own enemies. It's women are a product of this society that reinforce the status quo, even though they stand to benefit the most if they break away from that status quo. So it is our duty to ensure that as we target and we look out for male allies, we must also look out for more female allies so that we can recruit more women to be for the agenda, to see reason, and to also make deliberate decisions of taking steps to support the few women that put themselves up, especially when it is an election that it's at play. So
Let me
yes, so um,
let me still stay with you and find out that what would you say to people who say, I mean, give a person power and then you get to see the true color of the person, irrespective of the gender. If a woman should be in a position, a high position as such, get the opportunity, be a high position and misconduct herself, and the rules and laws of the land is dealing with the person directly, there's a school of thought that would say, because she's a woman, it's a woman over there, and so it's more or less a kind of witch hunt and stuff like that. How would you deconstruct laws and principles working in a particular office or in a particular time that it ought to work vis-a-vis commentaries that it is a witch hunt on the part of she being a woman?
first things first, we have to acknowledge that there's a place for science and there's a place for sentiment. In this advocacy, we must find the right balance between the science and sentiment. And to be fair, let's start with the science. The data does suggest that women in the public sphere face disproportionate amounts of scrutiny in comparison to their male leadership. It's a science-backed, it's a data-backed conclusion. The science suggests that women online receive disproportionate attacks in comparison to men doing the same thing, saying the same thing. There is also enough data that back the point that women are expected to be of better behavior than men. So what a man in the public eye may say and get away with, a woman will not get away with saying. She doesn't even have to say those same things. I as a communicator, have come under all kinds of attacks for saying not even up to a quarter of what my other male colleagues say and get away with it. Or even the nature of insults is different for women in the public eye. The choice insult for many women is go away, you're a prostitute, you slept your way to the top. But it would seem as if men who themselves come out to tell us proudly that they have had multiple partners and they have had so many children are rather hailed, or that kind of footprint is not seen as a reflection of their character, if you understand. So we have those examples across board. So you cannot say that we are all being marked with the same assessment tools. It would look as if we seem to want different behavior from women, which is also deeply rooted in our mindset of how a woman should behave or how a woman should talk. So even if somebody is your colleague and you've all earned the right to sit around the table, you would even see the dynamics play out in our parliament. Women who have contested elections and won elections like their colleagues, sometimes even older than some of them. When you get into that space, there seems to be a certain natural difference to the male counterparts. Even amongst colleagues and co-equals, there's this unwritten rule of who should speak more or who should be seen more. And sometimes I don't blame the men, because if we are in the spaces and it is time for you to talk and you will not talk, you cannot blame the men who end up taking control over the conversation or the direction of the conversation. Because I've sat in so many meetings and I've observed so many, meetings of equals, men and women. But when you table the subject matter, it would seem as if the men would be more open to contributing and literally taking charge of the conversation. Once in a while, you get one or two women dropping in a thing. So it is so deep-seated, this patriarchal thing, that even with the best of our women, they still catch themselves victims of expectations. So back to your question. No, we are not saying that give women a free pass, but we need to recognize the disadvantaged position that many women have come from, to especially those who are trailblazers and who have set, new benchmarks for others to want to aspire to. We are not saying that give them a whole pass, but we're saying that if you choose to actually give them a fair pass, an equal pass, they would actually do well. More than half of the time, they don't get a fair or equal, pass or assessment. And that's really why the narrative that, this is happening or this is not happening. I have said that of the few women who get into these positions, it is incumbent on us to also try as much as possible to cross our T's and dot our I's, so that we don't find ourselves unnecessarily in the eye of the storm, so that people will now use those rare examples to now say that, you people are fighting for these positions. When we give them to you, look at what you do. Of every woman you can point out to who didn't do well in her office, there are hundreds of men you can point out to who did worse. In fact, the
But they
state
need,
of the world, the state of the world, the
but they
state
need,
of Africa, the state
but do
of
you,
Ghana. Mhm.
but but you advocate that it is fair that the same lenses that are given to the male figure should also be given to the woman, in as much as, I mean, as you said, that there may be 1,000 men who may have done that same ill.
So yes, that's what I'm saying. That it is not, if we are not doing that, if we're dealing with people on the same level, these issues won't come up. We are not even dealing with women on the same level that we deal with the men. We are more intolerant of mistakes of women than we are of mistakes of men. Men have led countries since countries' independence. Ghana has had male leaders. What is the state of the world? What is the state of our independent and countries? What is the state of Ghana? What's the state of Nigeria? Men have led. Otherwise, we should have sacked all of them, because they've literally failed. They've failed to transform their economies. So I'm saying that we don't measure men and women in this world by the same benchmark, which is unfortunate. So yes, nobody is saying that give a woman free pass when they are in public office, but at least we need to do some reverse discrimination in terms of affirmative action to get as many women to come into those spaces. Allow them the same leeway you've allowed men to make mistakes. Let them learn from their mistakes, because Even the men who have had the experience of time in these positions still make mistakes. So you expect a woman who has come into a new field,
Right.
who has broken a generational cycle, who is doing something her great grandmother, her mother didn't even do. You expect her to come into that space and be a perfect human being. That's not possible. But even on the balance of it, especially in corporate world, there is evidence and the science to back up that every corporate organization that has more qualified women working in it has seen better prospects in terms of the bottom line. That is also a science and not a sentiment. Women
Right.
are good for business. If you support them, if you educate them, if you create the right environment that they can balance their multiple roles in our society, if you give them peace of mind, your organization, your country, your policies, your programs, your laws will be the better for it.
Right. Your laws, your country would be the better for it if you give more women the opportunity, because research has it that they have indeed proven to be productive in all spheres. Well, still citizens are, and unfortunately, time really flies when you truly need it the most. But we're about to wrap up, and I'd want to take your concluding remarks. But let me begin with Mr. Olakunle Sanni in Nigeria, the national coordinator for Child Protection Network. What is your advice for the next generation looking at the role? What role do mentorship and visibility play in preparing young women to step into leadership space that were previously closed to them?
Okay, so what I said at the beginning, I mean about the challenge of having those where having the mind to take on leadership role from at that level, because if they are not prepared at that level, it means that no matter the efforts or no matter the advocacy we do, it will be difficult for them taking up this leadership role. So for me, I mean, working with children, I want to focus more on, deliberately engaging girls at that level. I mean, young girls in leadership positions, engaging them. I mean, giving the right mentorship, ensuring that we are able to break the barriers of fears, and then we are also able to see some of these girls who are very assertive, they were also to see this assertiveness as a positive, as being positive, not something as because a lot of times when we see these girls when they are very assertive, we tend to term it as being negative, or maybe they are rude, or they are being So we need to look beyond um, we need to look beyond the negative part of it, and take
Mm,
it as a sign to say that okay, this girl is or this girl is equipped enough to take on leadership role later in the
right.
future, and they were able to guide and provide her with necessary mentorship and guide. Thank you.
Right, right. Thank you very much, Mr. Olakunle Sanni from Nigeria. Let me get to the corporate space and then get to Madam Gifty and Annor-Sika, Asantewah. Madam, from the corporate space as well, what do you say to young women to take up leadership roles in the corporate space as well? And how does, we've talked about economy and finances really play out, so how do you empower young women to take up their financial matters into their own hands through Forex as well?
I'll speak on mentorship and sponsorship. Um, if we have rigorous mentorship and sponsorship from organizations like the government and NGOs, giving empowerment in terms of capacity building and confidence building, inclusion and recognition, and then rigorous role modeling,
Mm,
this will probably come as some sort of positivity in that light, especially if these are done by women themselves in higher positions. It creates
right,
some sort of psychological, serotonin for the younger ones to know that if she can do it, I can do it. So more mentorship and sponsorship, especially with the women that are looking out to start their own businesses. The government is putting a lot a lot of opportunities out there for entrepreneurs. So there could be special opportunities for women, maybe for inclusion in those policies and initiative and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. Thank you very much, Madam Gifty Annor-Sika, CEO of Women in Forex. And let me conclude with Deputy Spokesperson for the government, Honorable Shamima Muslim. Your very final wrapping up comment, and how the government will continue create the enabling environment to show up women leadership.
I mean, for His Excellency, the President of Ghana, it's to continuously commit to amplifying women in government through the various positions he has appointed, many as ministers, deputy ministers, as CEOs, as deputy CEOs, as heads and deputies of various ministries, departments, and agencies, is to continue to do that and to encourage more governments to enforce, affirmative action laws and quotas, and of course also resource women's political participation. It's also to encourage the private sector to ensure that they also have some fast track programs to ensuring growth of women into their boardrooms and their C-suites. And this is very important to do deliberately. Media and academia has a major role to play, because I guess a lot of the sentiments around women, around image and representation, is also how the media presents and represents women in our media landscape. If the media tells more empowering stories about women and the contribution of women historically till the present, I think it would, to a large extent, begin to shape the mindsets or the hearts of the citizens in a more empowering way, and we'll begin to see women's leadership just as we see our mothers' leadership at home. If our mothers can raise us and take care of our home, if we celebrate our mothers on Mother's Day, if we point to our mothers as the matriarch in our families because of their sacrifices, because of their hard work and love for us, how do you think that if you move that same woman with the right skills and capacity into national life, she would fail? How do you think? So we need to reconnect that through the power of the media as well. And
Right.
academia, they also require to continue to churn out more science that prove that women empowerment and women representation is indeed good for business. Of course, the global partners will also continue with their work to ensuring that globally we know how well we are doing. So women's leadership is not a favor. We're not asking for tokenism. We're asking for it as a prerequisite really to transforming our countries. Our countries remain the way they are because you cannot walk on one leg when God
Right.
has given you two legs. So let us work together as partners to build our countries and to build our continent, and the world will be the better off for it.
Right. Thank you very much, Honorable Shamima Muslim, Deputy Presidential Spokesperson for Ghana. Well, listeners, this is the match we can take on today's debate edition of Citizens Are. Today, the debate was focused on encouraging women's leadership in a context where their voice is less heard. Our guests for the debate were Honorable Shamima Muslim, Deputy Presidential Spokesperson, Ghana, and Gifty Annor-Sika Asantewah, the Chief Executive Officer of Women in Forex, Ghana, and Olakunle Sanni, the National Coordinator, Child Protection Network in Nigeria. We will surely come your way next week with another topical issue of democratic concern. But for now, this is where we drop the anchor on Citizens Are on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM from Dakar, Senegal, on our website wadr.org, and on all of our social media platforms. We would love to hear from you, so send us an email via wadr@wadr.org. We would want to say many thanks to you for doing the listening, and special thanks to our listeners on our partner radio stations, Voice of Liberia FM 104.1 in Monrovia and Kwateke Radio 100.9 FM, Bon Conte, Liberia. In Ghana, we are also live on Radio Part Savannah Region, Royals FM Winchi and Focus FM Kumasi, as well as Radio Adan in the Greater Accra region. We also say a big thanks to our listeners on Adabaka Radio 97.5 FM Bauchi and Darlin FM 107.3 Owerri, Southeast Nigeria, Nedzet FM, Kaduna, Love FM, Abuja, Eastern Radio, Konu, 96.5 FM, Konu, and also on African Young Voices, 101.6 FM, Freetown, and Radio Buff, 91.3 FM, Mao 91 in Sierra Leone, and Hilltop Radio in the Gambia. Join us next week for another edition of your Citizens Engaging radio program, Citizens Are. I am Christopher Ticho, and as always, it is a blessing and an honor to come your way with Citizens Are. Let us all continue to work in the best interest of young people and the development of women's agenda. Bye-bye. Au revoir. Bonne journée.